so professorial with all those books behind you.
Thing is, you can only see this very narrow scope, right? If the camera panned around, it would be a disaster.
I'm just looking at my background now, realizing how messy the back of my desk is. So,
You're all set, Peggy.
okay, great. All right, great. Well, welcome everybody. And I'd like to call to order the Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, June 8th. Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. There. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the
United States of America
and
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice
for all.
for all. Okay, great. All right, thank you, everybody. Good morning, and let me just get up my sharing document here. All right, let's see the agenda. And just real quickly, if it's, can I have a motion to approve the minutes of May 26, 2020?
So moved.
Second.
Any amendments or changes to those minutes? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes pass. So what I'd like to do actually this morning, because Stacy Novitz, our finance director, is on this call, and there's a number of items we need to review with her that might take a bit, and she has a very hard stop at 8:30. She's got a bunch going on this morning, so I thought if we could move up items 6 through 9, which are relating to her area of expertise, and if we could move to that now to follow item number 2 on the agenda, and then I'll save my updates and everything else after we're done with Stacy. So if I could have a motion to move items number 6 through 9 to follow item 2.
So
So moved. Second.
Okay. Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. All right. So that's what I'll do now is I'm going to turn this over to Stacy. And I don't think I have any slides on this. So Stacy, if I can turn this over to you, I'll
Peggy, just before we go there, so members of the public who may or may not be on or waiting, citizen comments still will happen just after Stacy's section, correct?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
So 6 through 9 will come up and then they'll get an opportunity to weigh in after that. Okay. Let me stop the share and I will turn this
Hey,
over.
Stace.
Okay, so so the first item on the agenda is to discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request from the Facilities Department in the amount of $25,000 to replace a 2005 Chevy Equinox. And can I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, in a second.
Second.
Okay, for discussion. Real quickly, we have a vehicle kind of schedule for all vehicles in town government, and this schedule of this life cycle replacement schedule is based on estimates, and sometimes we get surprises. So this is a 15-year-old vehicle, and sometimes they don't last the extra year or two that we had hoped to do, and this is what happened to our director of facilities car. So I will turn it over to Stacy to just real briefly speak to this.
Well, Bill McMinn just popped up, so maybe we want to have Bill talk about what happened with his 2005 vehicle unexpectedly.
You got to stop off-roading, Billy.
Good morning. Happy Monday. Thanks for letting me join your meeting. I have a 2005 Chevy Equinox that I've been driving for 15 years. It's in great shape, except for the engine doesn't work anymore. So it didn't make any sense to really fix the engine for almost 10 grand. It just, it doesn't make sense. It's on the renewal, I think, for next year or the year after. I think it made total sense because I think it was in great shape other than the engine. I don't think you can, foresee those kind of errors or problems. So I need a new vehicle, and I'm happy to answer questions. I got 3 prices. I think we go with a low price. Once we have the funds available, we can see which car is still available. happy to go over more details if you're interested.
Billy, are you planning just to replace it with the equivalent of whatever that car was?
Yes, I got 3 prices. I got a Ford Escape, a Jeep Compass, and a Nissan Rogue. There 2 of them are 21,100, 21,300, and the other one's 23,000. So they're all under 25,000. I asked for 25. By the time we, get the funding in place, maybe one of them's not available. So the answer is yes, exactly the same car, that comparable. Small, white, 4-wheel drive. I really need 4-wheel drive for the winter time, bad weather, I'm out.
Sure. The Jeep and the Ford, would those come from the local stores?
No, these come off the state contract pricing. There's a contract off the state bid. They're local to Connecticut, but they're not local to Madison. The advantage, the Compass is $300, couple $100 more. Then we could get it repaired here in town versus if we do the Nissan Rogue, which is the lower one, we'd have to take that over to Old Saybrook. There's a dealership over there. Or if we went with the higher one, the 23,000, there's the Ford dealership here. But, I think my opinion is we either go with the low one, the Nissan Rogue, or we go the next low one, which is a couple $100 more, and then we can get it repaired in town.
That makes sense to me.
I think that makes sense to have the vehicle, repairable in town, either the Ford or the Jeep. Makes sense. So
Yeah, I agree.
And I apologize if it's a bit off topic. Do we ever give the local dealers the opportunity to match that state bid?
No, that's not how I do business. I do it off the state contract. I don't call and do that. I don't know if anybody else has. The way I've always bought them is right off the state contract for the lowest price we can do it. I do not. I have not. I can only speak for myself.
Yeah, I don't know why we wouldn't be able to do that if we wanted to, in terms of our purchasing policies, but certainly,
Maybe something to look into.
Yeah, exactly.
We have in the finance office in the past, we will call around to see if we, the lowest deal we can get based on starting with the state bid
Right.
price.
Yeah, and then that way you're supporting, obviously, a local business, which is always advantageous. All right, well, if everybody's good with that, any more questions? Okay.
Do we have any sense of this impact? So obviously we're doing it this year, a year early. Is there a possibility of a trade-off with maybe another vehicle that we may gain life on an additional year so that we're not eating $25,000? Do we know?
I think that the intention, as you recall, during the CIP discussion and through the budget process, was to reevaluate the entire vehicle replacement list, because this is the second vehicle that we've had a surprise, and so we want to kind of revisit the life of those in the state and see if we can get some sort of independent review. And that's part of what we're going to be going through this year. So there could be a total kind of tweaking to the schedule that we put through CIP for, I guess that would be July, right? Initially it's in July, but there's a schedule that I think that would be reviewed during the budget process, and that might change based on kind of the learnings we've had recently, as well as any changes that the study comes up with. So all in favor of approving a special appropriation request from the Facilities Department in the amount of $25,000 to replace a 2005 Chevy Equinox?
So I just maybe with the recommendation that we get one of the cars that's sourced locally or that can be serviced locally.
So amended.
So give Billy some direction on choosing the Jeep or the Ford over the Nissan. Is that?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that it's available when we purchase it. We're not going to have the funds, I don't think, until the 17th.
Yeah, because
So
this
if
has
one
to
of the
go through
cars
Board
is
of
gone,
Finance.
I will definitely go with the lowest one. I'll go with the Jeep first. But, and then if you want, I can go with the Escort, the Escape. If those are the two you want me to get, no problem. If they're available. If not, I don't want to have to come back.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Have a great.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, the next item is item number 7, discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation in the amount of $125,000 for COVID-19 related expenses. Can I have a motion to?
So moved.
So moved.
All right, great. Okay, so this is basically to review. We set up an account as soon as this whole kind of emergency happened in March, and so the emergency operations has been basically tracking any expenses related to COVID that the town has endured these last couple of months. I'm not sure what you got in your packet, but I'll let Stacy just kind of walk through kind of high level what those expenses are. There's kind of different buckets. And then we also talked about possibly, so I guess we would have to amend the motion of adding an additional, what was it, $15,000 going, changing it from 125 to 140,000, because this is all estimated and projected and we're still in June. And she was thinking maybe of even raising the amount of money for the special appropriation, because this still has to go to the Board of Finance for approval. So I'll let you walk through that.
Okay, so I believe in your packet there was a summary of what we've spent so far, and that is about $105,000. In addition to the 105, you'll see on your summary packet that there's about 16,000 of requisitions that are not added to that number yet. So we're almost at the 125,000, and that's what Peggy and I talked earlier this morning, that if we could bump it up a little bit, so we have a little bit of a buffer to get us through June 30th, whatever we don't spend will be returned to fund balance. Keep in mind, all these expenses are reimbursable by FEMA up to 75%. In addition, OPM at the state level is supposedly going to reimburse us for that additional 25%. So hopefully at some point we'll get 100% reimbursement. We're not sure on the time frame yet. FEMA takes a while in a typical disaster year. This is obviously unprecedented, and we found out through FEMA that we could apply quarterly. So hopefully the money will come in sooner than it normally would in any other FEMA reimbursement case.
Well,
so just go ahead.
Real quick, I just want to jump in there because I saw that the governor had announced actually that towns would actually be reimbursed 100%. That he made a statement last week. Is that?
Yep, he's going to cover the 25% that FEMA is not covering. So that's what they said. We have to exhaust our other efforts, and then through OPM we should be able to get any shortfall, which should be that 25% of the expenditures. So right now in the 100,000, just some big items that are in there. We had to rent that freezer for a few months for the food. That was almost $5,000. The food was over $20,000 that we had gotten for the emergency food supply. We also had over $10,000 in cleaning expenses. We had a Clean Town campus and the garage. And then the other big item were Zoom licenses. All of a sudden, that was almost like $15,000 trying to get the Zoom licenses up and running. So that makes up pretty much the $100,000. As well as PPE, obviously, all the masks, the supplies, the big one.
I was gonna say that's the biggest. That's one of the biggest.
In the gap.
Yeah.
Yep.
Zoom's making out like a bandit during this thing, huh?
Stacey, I don't think we got that detail in our packet that you're referencing.
Okay, yeah, I have the detail. It was an ugly report, so I just gave you the summary, but I can certainly email it out. In addition, one other item I forgot, there's about $9,000 in staffing that we started staffing the beach before normal times. So we're going to try to get reimbursed for that. We wouldn't normally have done it as early in a typical year. So that's also included in the number. But I will email out the detail if you want it.
Yeah, and I think overall, when we originally had talked about, expenses, was probably in early April. And at the time, we weren't sure what direction things are going to be taking in terms of access to food, food resources and things like that. We were concerned about the community being able to get, keeping Meals on Wheels going, things like that. So since then, things started shifting, and obviously there wasn't a disruption necessarily to our supply channels for food. So we ended up using, even though this freezer for food really was money that we would have spent for the Meals on Wheels program anyways, right? Stacy, or is this an addition to what our normal expenses would be?
I believe this was an addition.
Was it? Okay. So I know we've tried to use everything that had been kind of stockpiled, and we're working through that now. So nothing's going to waste. We're just, instead of new purchases, we're just using what we had stored. And I think it's all done, all used now, right? There's nothing left. I think they got rid of the freezer.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. So, so the other question is, this does not include some of the discussion about the police department, right? Because that's going to be when we go through the normal end of the year adjustments on overtime and things like that. So there'll be a further discussion on that. I know there'd been some questions about expenditures on police department overtime. But this does include some of the signage and things like that, right?
It does. It
Yeah.
does. Yeah. It does not include the overtime, but any other supplies or those signs, you're absolutely right. That could be part of that 16,000 requisition. That would be part of this account as well.
Okay. Okay.
We wouldn't expect to see other expenses down the road other than the police overtime.
We don't know. That's why we kind of wanted to bump up the 125. That's where we are right now. We still have, it's only June 8th. So if we do need more supplies, well, that's why I just kind of wanted to put that little buffer in there if we do, or if there's an invoice out there that I don't know about yet. So I would hate to go through the process again, because we have to go to both boards and town meeting because it's over the 50. So.
Have we learned anything about stockpiling of supplies? Are we likely to want to try to be better prepared for the next time something happens? Or are we attempting to put away more materials for the future?
I think that definitely, especially when it comes to PPE, because we understand that there's a risk of a resurgence. We just don't know when or how or what the directives will be at that time. So we're still trying to make sure we have a buffer zone in terms of PPE. Otherwise, I think, we're learning and figuring out how this is going to evolve right now to prepare. So, so I'm not, I think we're doing our best to predict, but it's June and technically the state of emergency lasts till September 9th, the governor's order. So I'm not sure what this summer will bring. But yes, Al, we are trying to, at least from a equipment and supply basis, and it's not just PPE, it's the wipes, to wash everything down. These are all things that we have to do as a town government. And I know businesses have to do the same thing, thermometers, we're just trying to make sure that we have enough supplies at hand to serve the employees here too, and make sure, things are kept clean and sanitized as much as possible. Okay, so I guess, go ahead.
Amend the agenda item to increase the amount, Peggy? Do you know what?
Yeah, I have a motion, I guess, to amend the agenda item to approve a special appropriation in the amount of 140,000 for COVID-19 related expenses.
I'll move that.
Second.
Okay, great. Any further discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Is Erin on? We lose her?
She is, but she's not whatever. She didn't get promoted, I think. So she's in as a townsperson. We just need to promote her. She got bumped off.
Lauren? Okay.
I'm doing it.
Okay. I just want to make sure so she can vote.
I hope it's her because it just says Erin.
Yes. Erin?
She's muted.
Thank you. I'm here. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. I was there the whole time, but I couldn't
Okay.
participate. Sorry.
Well, we're about to vote, and then I realized did you have any additional questions? Are you okay increasing the amount to $140,000?
I'm okay.
Okay,
I'm
great.
okay with it.
All right, so all in favor? Aye.
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 Great. All right, thank you. All right. Next item is an updated on projected year-end fund balance and cost savings for fiscal year 2019, 2020. And this is just an update. I thought it would be helpful for the board, and I apologize, where are my pages here? But if Stacy could talk to this a little bit, but because of the fact that kind of we were operating in a very different world for the last several months, we did have a number of cost savings in each of our departments that is quite substantial, and that's going to be feeding into the fund balance for the end of the year. So Stacy, I don't know if you want to spend a few minutes talking through that.
Yes, I apologize. I thought I could share my screen. I don't know, Peggy, if you can share that fund balance projection. I can't share it. If not, I can certainly talk about it, and I can email that out as well. So looking at the projected fund balance after our special appropriations that already took place during the fiscal year, and all the additional revenue from the OLM lease, from the state funding that we did not budget for, as well as a tax collector, we're looking at a projected, oh, perfect. We're looking at a projected fund balance, if you go down to the first orangey highlight, of $15 million. So that includes estimated $500,000 of savings and expenditures for the town, and approximately $350 in savings for the Board of Ed. So this is so premature. You know, we leave the town books open through July 31st because invoices could still roll in, and there could be items in there that I don't know about. Plus, we still have the rest of this month. So this is where we are right now. It's very conservative. If you go down below that orange row, you can see the yellow. That 673 is what we use to offset the upcoming budget year from the fund balance to offset the mill rate. And then that $8.3 million is our 10% existing fund balance regulation. So at all times, we should at least keep that in fund balance for savings for an emergency. So after our regulation and after covering the 673 for next year's mill rate, we still have over $6 million in our undesignated fund balance. Again, this is an estimate. I do have a little bit of further details on the $500,000 for the town expenditures if you wanted, but I'll just keep updating you guys, every meeting from now on through the end. When we get close to the audit is where we stand.
Yeah,
the savings that we're seeing here is the 15 million. Is that what we're understanding?
No,
the 15 million is our projected ending fund balance at the end of, that should say June 30th, 2020. I apologize. That's our ending fund balance at the end of this current fiscal year that I'm projecting.
Oh, so the savings that we're seeing though is that the top 455?
The 500, the 500 number. So
yeah, the shaded gray in the middle, those are savings. So the first 4 items are revenue over what we budgeted. So that's our excess revenue, those first 4 items, the OLM, some state funding, miscellaneous revenue, and the tax collector. So that's what we're looking at right now, that our revenue, we have some additional revenue. And then the savings in the individual departments is that $500,000 number. And then the Board of Ed, again, total estimate, we're not there yet. It's pretty much based on historical return, is $350. And keep in mind, the Board of Ed also had approximately $100,000 in COVID expenditures, but they did line item transfers to that COVID account to cover it within the Board of Ed account. So they didn't have to come for a special appropriation.
Sorry, guys, I'm messing up the sharing. Are you still looking at what are you looking at now?
It's still there.
Okay, because it's funny. My screen shows the agenda now. I don't know how that happened. So, okay.
Stacy, Do you have at your fingertips what the unassigned fund balance was at the end of the last fiscal year?
It's right up at the top, at 13 million.
So we've gone from 13 to 15.7 or projected
Correct.
15.7?
Yes, and that basically, if you just do the math, Bruce, 455 for special appropriations, that will go up to 15,000 because at this point I was only assuming 125 for COVID. And then the results of the operation are pretty much in that middle section. That brings up the fund balance from last year. So it kind of walks us from last year's audited number to where we are now. Again, total estimate, don't hold me to these numbers, you know, I'm very conservative, but this is where I'm seeing where we are right now.
And just real quickly, the 500,000 is kind of a mixture of a lot of different things, and Stacy can give, you know, maybe the next meeting is a better time to really walk through that because she's been just pulling these numbers together still. And we still have a month to go. But, you know, that includes, you know, snow plowing, for example, out of Public Works. It includes, you know, beach and rec, you know, maintenance and supplies, things that projects maybe they didn't continue or maintenance that they didn't have to do. It includes some savings from positions not filled, for example, Madison Youth and Family Services, senior services. So there's a number of items in here that were, it's kind of a broad brush, different from different departments. Okay. So any more questions for Stacy on that? And like, this is just an update, and we'll give another one at our next meeting as these get refined.
So I think as a placeholder, thanks, Stacy, but as we move on to budgeting for next year, this is going to be an important worksheet for us to have. If you could just remind us of this one time, please.
Okay. Okay, so moving on then, and the last item, because I know Stacy has to go, is discuss and take action to approve line item transfers totaling $102,842.89. Can I have a motion?
Before we,
Yeah.
before you actually move that, I had sent you guys an email on Friday that there was a straggler and that we actually needed to increase the amount that we were going to move. And I'm just trying to get to my sent emails on my other computer.
Oh, that's right. This is additional 6,000 or something.
Yeah.
20,500. This was for the retiree health
Oh, right. Okay.
in the heart and hypertension, and it's coming from the DC plan. I had also sent an email explaining where the funds were coming from.
And so what would be the total amount then that we would be transferring?
I'm just trying to find it because I did send it to you guys in an email. So I'm just.
Total would be 123,342.89.
Okay, great. All right, so I would like to well, we had a motion and a second, right?
I'll amend my motion.
Okay,
For the balance.
all right.
Second.
Okay, great. So discussion, so basically this is just moving for the public's benefit, money from one account in a department to another account in a department. And so Stacy, if you could just real briefly walk through that.
Sure, I can highlight the bigger ones. The detail is in your packet. There's about 10 different line item transfers. The big one, the first one I'll mention was a straggler that we were moving money from our DC budgeted contribution, and we're moving that over the majority to the retiree health. We had some retirees, we had to pay out some severance, vacation time on the books that was not budgeted. We had savings in the DC pension contribution because we budget at the max of what we're required for everybody who contributes, and not everybody contributed the max. So that's why we had funds available in there. The next bit, or the biggest item actually, was for beach and rec, where they moved money from various accounts. The biggest one was the security line item that we did not use, nor did we budget for it for next year. So there were funds in there, and this was to cover wages for the remainder of the fiscal year, including lifeguards. And then the other big one was from Public Works, moving from various line items to his materials and infrastructure to get some more paving and some work done on the roads. The other ones were small.
And my understanding, this is kind of a typical process that happens every time at the end of the year.
It does.
So any more discussion on the line item transfers? No? All right, all in favor to the motion as amended?
Aye.
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 Okay, great. All right, Stacy.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
Off to Munis.
Off to Munis. So yeah, perfect timing, 8:32. So, all right, great. So now we are back to Selectwoman's update, and I will try to keep this very brief. I'm going to screen share again. Hold on a second. To the document. All right. So just real quickly, first of all, I just want to, this is our first meeting since obviously a lot of events have been unfolding across the nation these last couple of weeks. And the board last week wanted to come together and issue a statement in recognition of those events. And I want to, first of all, thank everybody here because I think it was a great team effort. We were obviously all feeling you know, a lot the last week on what's going on across the nation, and wanted to just express some sort of solidarity and support. So this statement was sent out June 5th. And just real quickly, I'll read through it very quickly, but statement from the Madison Board of Selectmen. At this moment of America's pain and despair, Madison's Board of Selectmen, you know, it's funny, I can't see it now because the screen's covering up, sorry. Madison's Board of Selectmen wants to unanimously voice its outrage over the actions of the 4 Minneapolis police officers that resulted in the death of George Floyd. The people of Madison wholeheartedly condemn racism, bigotry, and hate in any form, and stand together with the people of Minneapolis and our nation in mourning over this tragic death. We hope that our nation's citizenry will be able to tap the emotional energy triggered by this anguish to rededicate our efforts to building an ever more just society. We embrace and support the rights of all citizens to peacefully protest and express their indignation at the inequities and injustices that continue to persist in our nation. Nevertheless, we strongly condemn unlawful behavior directed against law enforcement officers, as well as the citizens and property which they are sworn to protect. We also recognize and are grateful for the professionalism of the Madison Police Department and their continued commitment to work in partnership with all sectors of our community, proudly demonstrating courtesy, integrity, and respect. So I just wanted to highlight that statement. I want to again say thank you to the board for working so collaboratively to put this forward. We were all in attendance last night at the vigil that was held at the First Congregational Church. And I just want to say I'm proud to serve with all of you. And I was very proud of our community last night. So thank you for all of that. So I will move on, and other board members, if you'd like to weigh in and make any comments during your now, you're welcome to, about the vigil or a statement, or you can save them for selectmen comments. So I don't know if anybody had wanted to make a statement now. No? Okay. All right, so I'll just real quickly do it, my update. We're going into phase 2 now, is moved up to June 17th. And the governor just issued Saturday afternoon a bunch of guidelines for the businesses opening on June 17th. And so we'll be working now over the next 2 weeks, helping local businesses and also organizations, because this includes a lot of nonprofit organizations, athletic facilities, things like that in our community, to make sure that they can open safely on June 17th following the state guidelines. In terms of town operations, we are now open to the public for appointment only. And we are continue to going through senior staff operational capital spending plans for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. And at our next board meeting, I'll talk a little bit about that. And this purpose of this is not to necessarily change the budget, so to speak, but it's also to talk about priorities and timing of things. So we'll get into that at our next Board of Selectmen meeting, but I've been working with staff and meeting with every department head, reviewing their budgets. And then the Long-Term Recovery Committee, we're hoping to have the members of that committee finalize this week and actually have it available on the website so that people in town, if they want to reach out and get information on opening up their business, they'll have a direct point of contact to go through. Because right now, I think a lot of questions are coming in through the Reopen Madison email, which has been, I think, really successful. But now we want to get these things funneled to kind of each part of the Long-Term Recovery Committee that fits with that sector. So there'll be a part of the website that'll be launched hopefully by the end of this week, that the community can go and learn more about the committee and then who to contact in the committee. And then just real quickly, because Beach and Rec is such a big part of our lives now, Beach Pass stickers can be purchased now at the Surf Club office 7 days a week. So you can go in person, and I think that's been running fairly smoothly. And you need your sticker by June 20th. We keep getting that question. So just so you know, you will need to have a sticker. We will not be accepting other forms of residential, demonstrating residence ID, driver's license and things like that will no longer be accepted starting June 20th. You have to have a sticker. And then we're still hoping to launch next week the online sales, which is basically just purchasing the sticker online versus having to do a mail-in form, and then you'll still get the sticker in the mail. So there's not going to be an instant way to get your sticker. You either go in person or you can order it, and it'll take a couple of days for it to get to you by mail. Programming is now available on the website for the summer, and we're hoping to maybe amend or expand that programming because we got some additional guidance from the state, so that right now I think Scott Erskine and his team has done a great job putting together what is workable under today's guidelines for kids in the community, and giving parents an opportunity to put their kids in some day camps. And then we're hoping to expand that programming possibly over the next couple of weeks. And then we're still working on some of the events issues. And we'll have to look at the summer concert series based on recent guidelines. And I know they're planning to do a drive-in movie at the Surf Club. So more details will be available for that. We're going to do a test run, I think, towards the end of June. And if it goes well, we might have it as a regular event through in July and August. So that is my quick update. And so I'd like to turn it over to any other selectmen liaison reports or comments. Anybody else?
I mean, I guess just a comment on the peace vigil yesterday to follow up on what you said, Peggy. I was really proud to see our town coming together in such a constructive, peaceful way. I was proud of our board in coming together to support this particular movement. And then I was also beaming to see the planning and the forethought and the efforts of our Madison Police Department in terms of what they did for our community to ensure the health and safety of everybody, especially Jack Drum, and all the time and efforts that he put into the planning was exceptional. And we are so grateful to them.
Thank you, Scott. I think that Chief Drum and the whole police department did an amazing job, and they were present and I think just really thoughtful about how they worked with the organizers of this event. So really appreciate that. Any other comments? No? No. Okay. All right, next item is citizens' comments. Do we have any citizen comments, Lauren?
Yeah, we do have one, Maureen Lopes. Peggy, if you want to take off the sharing, I can add Maureen to talk, and then. Maureen, you can go ahead and unmute, and then you can give your public comment.
Thank you, Lauren. You can hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm Maureen Lopes from 25 Old Farms Road. So I do want to make one comment. and related statement about the statement made by the Board of Selectmen that really caught my eye. The people of Madison wholeheartedly condemn racism, bigotry, and hate in any form. I have to tell you, that's not my impression of the town. Over the years that I've been here, you can hear casual conversations in Willoughby's. We've heard it, people hanging out at different, sports activities and stuff. There's plenty of silent racism in this town. And so I don't want us to be surprised by that. I did have a chance this morning to watch the video that's on the police department about looking at traffic stops and whatever. And that found that 96% of our residents are white. We're Americans, right? The original sin of America is slavery. And so we still all bear that. What I'd like to ask for the future is that we do delve deeper. I realize I have no idea how many traffic stops are made in this town and what's the ethnic makeup of those people. How many of our officers have ever been cited for unreasonable behavior or whatever. I can watch across the country and I realize, this is new for me, I admit my white privilege and racism, that I've never asked that question in Madison. And there's got to have been times, particularly when I looked around the green yesterday, which it was so amazing to me how quiet people could be in Madison. There was real gathering there together, but the people of color were our young people, right? Now that's a hope of the future. They were grammar school age, they were high school kids, probably, I don't know ages anymore, but they were probably some college kids. But are they truly safe? Every time I see, particularly a male person of color, I worry about them. As I worry about my friends of that age in other places. So let's not be naive about this. I'm not quite sure where to go with this concern. You don't find statistics on our website. Maybe it's to the Board of Police. So I ask us just not to say, okay, we had a great gathering and there's no problem in Madison. We are a reflection of this country. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. And I think your questions are valid. We do have actually a board of police commissioners here in town that is an oversight board of our police department. And I know this is going to be an ongoing conversation. Al is the liaison to that board, and I formerly sat on that board. And I can say that it's certainly an important conversation that we have to continue to have in our community. I think we're all learning from this whole experience, and I appreciate you expressing your concerns. Any other public comment, Lauren?
You do have one more. Give me one moment.
Yeah.
Jude Friedman would like to give public comment. Jude, you can go ahead and unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I just wanted to thank also the police department and the town, particularly the organizers for the wonderful event yesterday evening on the First Congregational Church Green. I think that was something that the town really needed to participate in, and was, I think we were all very pleased with the outcome. I don't know if Marie is still on the line or not, but I did want everyone to know that the Madison Diversity and Inclusion Committee is having Chief Drum speak at its next meeting. He'll answer any questions that the public has. So I just wanted to make that known to folks who are in attendance. And you can find the Madison Diversity and Inclusion Committee on Facebook. You can look it up there if you'd like to attend that meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else, Lauren?
There are no other hands raised.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you, Jude, for your comments. And I guess we can move on to regular business. I think we're on update number 10, update on downtown center project. And I think Rob is on the line. Is that correct, Lauren?
I just promoted Rob. You should see him any second.
Okay, great. And I sent out to the board a more detailed memo that John Anako, who's our Director of Public Works, could not join us this morning. He had a personal commitment, but he did forward, put a memo together just summarizing some information on the project. But our town engineer, Rob Russo, has joined us, hopefully. Yeah, see you here.
Hi, how you doing? Good morning.
Okay. And so I just did 2 slides here to summarize this. This is obviously a very high profile project that has been going on for a number of years now in town. And it's kind of had an evolution. It originally started, I think, with primarily being grant funded. It had expansive improvement plans for downtown going from Wall Street to Route 79. And then as costs go up with any public project, unfortunately, things had to be scaled back a bit. And so the town has been kind of trying to do things in chunks to complete the project. And so I kind of looked at this in 2 phases, and I've been spending some time with John and Rob talking about the phasing here. And Rob, if you could maybe speak a little bit more about that, what the original project was, and then how it was scaled back, and then what's left on that first piece of the project. That'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So from my understanding, the project started at least in its inception around 2005, and it had gone through a sort of planning phase, and then ultimately it sort of started to gain some steam and came to fruition when the design plan set was completed, I think back in around 2015. And during that time, I wish Stacy was here to fact check me on the grant funding, but over the course of numerous years, I think we have here in 2003, 2009, 2011, 12, and 13, we received numerous grants from the government for construction of the project. So at that time, the former town engineer had designed the project and put it out to bid. Like as you could see from Peggy's slide here, the original project estimate performed by the former town engineer was $2,495,000. So just a quick history on this is that the low bidder for the project was J. Appaluccio out of Brookfield, Connecticut. Their base bid was $2.7 million and change, and that didn't include the alternates, which the 3 alternates for the project were decorative crosswalks at Route 79 and Meigs Avenue, and also Boston Post Road and Wall Street, that intersection there. And the alternate 2 was the Tuxas Pond Walkway entrance, and alternate 3 was the center median. And if you total all of those up, I think the total bid was $3.4 million. So we only had about 1.8 million, 8.5 in grant money to put towards the project. So at that point in time, the town representatives, town staff had met with Jay Appaluccio to sort of value engineer the project. And it took a mix of the base bid and as well as some of the alternates being, and as you could see now from what's currently built out there, one of the decorative crosswalks was constructed, the one at Boston Post Road on the Wall Street side, as well as the center median that was constructed. No elements of the Tuxas Pond Walkway entrance were constructed. So it was basically a mix of Jay Appaluccio's original bid, and it value engineered it down to $1.85 million. And that sort of brings us where we are today with what you see out there. It was basically the firehouse to Wall Street. So from the firehouse to Route 79 has not been constructed at this point in time. There's been some minor improvements. The Department of Public Works has sort of funded with other with our funding. We finished off the pedestrian signal heads. I think it was not this past January, the January before. We finished off the pedestrian signal heads working with DOT, and we'd also worked with DOT to provide some of the line striping. The parking stalls was town funded also. So that sort of brings us through what how the project was value engineered, why it was value engineered, and some of the expenditures that were made since it's the project's construction commencement, basically.
Yeah, and I tried to, you know, I think one of the big questions I had after I got elected was, when are the telephone poles coming down? And so that was kind of the initial discussion I had with Rob and John about, okay, what is it going to cost to do that? And was this originally estimated or not? And unfortunately, the original budget didn't include some of those costs. And so I asked them to go out and actually find out what the cost would be, because it's not just bringing the utility poles down, but it's taking each of those businesses along Route 1, both the north and south side of the street, and hooking them up to service. So it takes electrician time, and so the cost to do that, just to get, if we get the easements, and we have 3 easements still that we have to get secured, and we're working hard to do that. 1 is on the south side of the street and 2 are on the north side of the street. And we've made a lot of progress, I think, and we're getting closer to finalizing those things. We've spent some time over the last couple of months. COVID has kind of delayed us a little bit, but we're hopeful that we can get those. But once we get those easements signed, we still have to spend some money to complete the project, to get those poles down. And so the estimate that Rob had come up with was $355,000 for that. That's a really rough number, because each business is going to have unique characteristics of how the service has to be handled. And so the town is going to have to work through and do more detailed work to finalize those numbers. And then the next piece is just really, now that we've done that, if we can get those poles down and get all the businesses in the north and the south side of the street hooked up to the service, it's then completing it and going all the way to Route 79. And that's what the other 1.389 million is. So I guess I opened it up for discussion. It's in how we're going to go about this and what a priority it is for us as a community to spend that money that is not budgeted. Unfortunately, none of this is in CIP. So I think the idea would be to maybe try to put some of this into CIP, and then some of the more, you know, the early work with the utility poles and stuff, do we not go through CIP? Do we try to do that another route? Because right now, none of this information is included as part of the budget or CIP.
For this current year, you're saying? Was
Right.
phase 2 in CIP? I can't remember, to be honest with you.
We've put in just a placeholder with,
TBD.
well, no. So I think we've had numbers in there, but we've put in an offsetting grant.
Right.
So it hasn't
Right.
impacted the bottom line. We've put the project in with an offsetting income source. So, and we've been doing that, I think, since the beginning of CIP. The issue of the easements has really been lingering for some time. I know that the board authorized some action 2 years ago about that. Any update on when we're likely to see those easement issues resolved?
I'm hopeful very soon. I started getting involved in these negotiations probably the end of January, very soon after I got elected. And it's, you know, an ongoing discussion. I think the one on the south side of the street, we were probably close to getting that finalized. There's just a few details I think Rob's working on. If that happens, it would allow us to basically get the poles down on the south side of the street. Unfortunately, we don't have any funding for that. So, and Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, to do the south side, just the south side, if we were to get that easement signed finally, that would be what, around 200,000 or something? So that's like,
Yeah,
I think about 2/3 of the estimate.
yeah, it was about 230,000, but I have a contingency built in there because right now, until we get prices from the electricians to do all the service hookups, is a little bit of an unknown in there that we could sort of narrow down on after we get the easement finalized, and we move forward a little bit. But yeah, that was somewhere in that neighborhood.
And remember, these easements are actually not town easements. These are easements with Eversource. So it's a three-way negotiation on these things. So the north side of the street, there's two properties, and one of them, I know there's been a history of, just problematic discussions back and forth. And I think it was unfortunate that these weren't, signed up prior to doing the work, and we've done all the underground work without having the easement signed. So it's kind of hamstrung the town in its negotiations, because it's a sunk cost. We've already put in the groundwork. We've done the work to put the utilities underground, and Eversource has done that. But they just haven't actually given us permission to access what's already there. And so I remain hopeful that we'll get there. We've had more discussions. We've been going back on different documents, but once again, this is also involving Eversource. And so it's a three-party negotiation. And so the town is kind of caught in the middle, I would say, on this. So we're almost acting as a go-between between the two parties at times. So I'm hopeful, though, that we could get those secured soon. And on the north side as well. And then the question is just funding to actually, do the final step in this, which is get the poles down and hook up people for service, the underground service.
I thought we were led to believe, this again, maybe prior to the previous election, Peggy, but I thought we were led to believe that there was only one easement left and that Eversource was going to be taking the poles down at their cost, not at our cost.
I mean, when I sat down with the team in January, that's not the case. There are three, and that was very clear with my discussions with Rob and John, that there were three easements still outstanding, and that it was never included in any estimate for the utility hookup or the pole removal. And typically, because
I thought the eminent domain, though, was the last one that we were trying to that was our hurdle. That was the only one we needed to get through.
Well,
I didn't realize there was two others.
The eminent domain, I think, applied to the two properties on the north side of the street, right, Rob? Not just the one, but both properties?
Yeah, so there's a little confusion with that too, because I think when discussion was originally opened about moving forward with eminent domain, both properties were included. And then for whatever reason, which I'm not sure about, I think when it was discussed again to actually move forward, I think when you guys had voted on the whoever, or I think Scott now, who were involved, and Bruce, who were involved, I think when it actually moved forward, for some reason, the neighboring property was pulled out of that, and I think the eminent domain was only moving forward with the sole property owner. But make no mistake, there are on that side of the street, there are three properties there that have electric distribution easement on them. One of the owners has signed, and it's hasn't been recorded, but it's being held now. And the other two properties still haven't signed. So there are still two outstanding on the north side.
No, that wasn't me, Rob. I think that it might have been Al that was involved in that.
Okay. I'm sorry. I forget. But I remember that. Eminent domain. I was just looking for some insight on. I wasn't really sure why one of the properties dropped off of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I don't know. I know that the issue with one of the properties has just been more lack of responsiveness, and and the other property has been more an active dialogue that has evolved. It's been a back and forth, and I think primarily because of the lack of their understanding really of what this easement was going to mean to their property. And I think that's something that we've made a lot of progress the last couple of months, because I think there's a recognition that these aren't insignificant easements, especially, lots downtown are small, you have buildings on them. And they're normal and they're standard and they happen all the time. But, I think people, I don't want to use the word buyer's remorse, but I think there was just a little bit more of a not fully understanding what the easement was going to be to these properties owners. So, and so now we're working with them. We're trying to just get also Eversource to be a little bit more cooperative as well. It's just been there's a long history here, obviously, and I think people are just tired overall with the back and forth over the last couple of years. And I'm hoping that we can kind of bring this all to a conclusion. But it is, I think Eversource's view from day one is they didn't need any of this to happen, right? They didn't, whether the service is above the ground or below the ground, there's no benefit to Eversource, although I would argue there is a benefit because especially with storms and everything, this is going to be beneficial to them in the long run. But I think their view has been, this is something to accommodate what the town wanted, to improve our downtown district, the aesthetics of it. So coming from that perspective, is difficult in a three-way negotiation. And so, I'm hopeful that we can get through the easements, and then take the next step to actually do the, what is the most visible, I think, to our community is getting the poles down and hooking up the service.
Was there an original assumption though, and Peggy, you may not know this because it was the past administration, but was there an assumption that Eversource was going to take the poles down for free? I thought that was the case.
We can't find anything documenting that at all. And Rob is not under the understanding, or John Anako, of that understanding. I think it was just one of those things that was out there that was never really specified. So there's no numbers anywhere that refer to that. There's no documents saying that Eversource would be handling this. And from my understanding, it's not something typically that they would do. It's not an expense that they would incur to pay for business owners to hook up to their service. It's not their project, it's the town's project. And so that's my understanding of where this stands. And maybe, I don't know, Bruce and Al and Scott, just through previous discussions on this over the years, I don't know if you've heard anything differently than that, but.
My recollection is similar to Scott's. I thought that at least with regards to removing the poles, that Eversource had extended an offer to remove those. I don't think there was ever an offer to hook up service, but I agree with Scott. That's what I remember. I'd have to go back to my notes.
Who from the town has been leading the town's efforts on the project? Like, could we maybe have someone come in and give us kind of would it be worthwhile to have some, because I haven't been involved to the extent that you all have, would it be worthwhile to have some sort of a background, or do you think that would be not helpful at this point? We're just looking to move forward, just because there's so much discussion here about where we're at and what happened.
Well, I think Rob can talk a little bit. I mean, originally this project was being championed or spearheaded by our former town engineer,
Mike.
And so I think, Rob, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that, but that was originally who had engineered a lot of this and who had kind of ushered this whole project from the beginning. And he left how many years ago now?
Was it 3? I think 3.
Okay.
3 years.
So could John shed any light on some of these questions, or we don't have that? I don't understand why we don't have, there's just so much, seems so much. I'm just trying to get caught up here, and I'm like, there doesn't seem to be any information.
Well, so give me give me a specific question. I'll see if I can answer it.
Well, just with the easements, and how can we have no information or documentation, or I don't as to, there just seems to be a lot of confusion, I guess, about where things were left.
So I think in short form, and Rob, you can correct me, The town proceeded to improve the property and put in the provisions for the utility service prior to securing the easements.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
is that because we got grants and so we wanted to take advantage of them and move forward? Or,
We probably weren't as diligent in thinking about the proper sequence
okay,
at the time as we should have been. So I think there was basically a gentleman's handshake
Mhm.
on this work.
I'd
Yeah,
like to jump in here because I also have some sense of the history of this. And this presentation this morning has been extremely helpful because I can't recall the last time we have seen actual estimates to complete the project. I think it's been a long, long time since the selectmen have been presented with an exhibit like this. And frankly, it's astonishing to me that I'm not questioning the validity of the numbers. I'm just astonished that the numbers are so high and that we were not aware of these numbers of how much it was really going to take to complete this project. So I'm a bit taken aback this morning because I think the Board of Selectmen was under the impression that this project was moving along and we pretty much had enough funds set aside to take care of it. I'm not pointing any fingers here. I'm just reacting to the fact that these numbers are much higher than I think we have been led to believe in the past. Aaron, I think I'm going to kind of echo Bruce's statement that perhaps things weren't sequenced correctly, and we went ahead and committed to doing some of the infrastructure work before all of the property owners had signed off and agreed to cooperate with us. So we now find ourselves having invested in the infrastructure, and we still have 3 property owners that we've got to get on board here. Plus, we have to figure out how to come up with the remainder of the funds. Somewhere along the line, there's perhaps a possibility that the federal government, in order to stimulate the economy, is going to fund some infrastructure projects. And perhaps that's a possible source of funding for something like this. Otherwise, I think we're going to have to, as a board and as a community, make a determination as to whether we want to put this into CIP and fund it ourselves. The history of this project goes back even before 2005, and probably a Gus Horvath could provide some more historical byplay on this, but I think it was originally conceived that all of this would be paid for out of grants from the state. And it wasn't until relatively recently that it's become clear that a lot more local funding is going to be needed in order to complete the project.
I know that on the grant side, Rob and I have talked about, originally the governor had actually laid out a kind of strategy for infrastructure improvements, and that was a priority. This was in January, pre-COVID. And there was talk about a number of grants to make things more pedestrian friendly for our roads. The Department of Transportation had laid this out. And so we were going to look into try to tap into those. And then in addition, there is another grant. I don't know if it's a steep grant. I'm not quite sure, Rob, that John was going to look into that we might actually apply for to cover some of, it's not going to cover the $355,000. These would all be under phase 2. So anything dealing with the street itself, the pedestrian walkway. So there are some opportunities to maybe take that 1.389 number and knock it down and get some more grant coverage in that. And we're looking into all of that right now. I'm not sure where things are going to be now with the state, obviously with COVID and the budget situation, and the state, the state's financial situation, but we're certainly going to try to pursue as many of those as we can. But the 355, I don't think you're going to get a grant to cover that. So that's just a number that we're going to have to swallow if we want to make this happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, and part of that 355 was actually given to me by Eversource, a senior design and supervising design engineer for Eversource. I specifically asked him that question. I said, this was back in March 16th, I believe, around mid-March of this year, right around the time the pandemic was starting up. I specifically mentioned there's been some language around town here that the poles were going to be coming down at no cost to the town. And he had instructed me that that sentiment was incorrect. And he had quoted me 95, this is an estimate, but this is based on their sort of quantities that they have for their infrastructure that's downtown to take the poles to take the poles down is about let me see, I think it was 95,000. I have it on my quote here. Yeah, the work associated with taking the poles down is 95,000, and actually physically taking the poles down themselves was another 12,000. So yeah, you're looking at about over 100K. So a little over 100K of that 355 is a bill directly to Eversource.
Right. And then we would be hiring like contractors, electrical contractors, I guess, for the rest of it.
Right. So then another major. So there's a couple elements to that. There's some remaining like conduit and infrastructure that needs to be built. So that's an element to this. Another element is Eversource's portion, which we'll be paying them. And then, Peggy, you're correct. There'll be individual electricians to do all the service hookups for each of the meter locations throughout all of downtown. And then there's also a little bit of a telecommunication expense. They'll have to take their services off the poles and do some pulling some wires overhead to underground. So it's telecommunication, electric, Eversource's portion. And again, there is some infrastructure that needs to be built still, particularly on the south side. So that's where you're getting the 355 from.
So maybe to kind of put a final thought on this, it looks like the easements are a negotiation, Peggy, that you're hopeful you've got some good dialogues going and you think that can be moving along. And then once that's resolved, it's just a matter of figuring out how to fund the remaining expense for phase one. Is that accurate? In other words, if we had the easements this morning, we would just simply be having a discussion about how best to fund the completion.
Exactly.
Right, but the issue is, I think we need the easements as the gating factor to anything, right? So I think we need to understand the timeline of when those easements will be issued to move forward, right?
And what is our plan B should we not be able to do that?
Yeah, what happens if we can't get the easements? I mean, we were going down the whole path of eminent domain last year.
Well, we've talked about that. I think right now it's best not to, in a public setting. This would get into negotiation strategy. And I think that's a discussion that we could perhaps have an executive session if we have to go to that point. I think right now we're having a good active dialogue with the three properties, and I'm hopeful. And if we can't get to a satisfactory agreement with them, there are other measures that we can take. So, and I would reserve that for, executive session discussion in the future.
Peggy, I'd like to suggest that since this spans so many administrations, that maybe you reach out to Fillmore and Tom and sit down with them and see what they remember, what commitments they think they received, what commitments they think they gave. And it might help guide the future conversation for you as you look to complete this.
Yeah, no, fair enough. It definitely spans a long time. and every first selectman has had to wrestle with this. And I think my goal was to let's just get some real detail get our arms around where we are, put some numbers to attach to it and a timeline. And so,
Good.
and I think phase 2, to be honest, is something that should be submitted into CIP in July. And where that falls in CIP in terms of year 1, year 2, year 3, that'll be a big part of the discussion, I think, during our budget season. But, and then we'll also try to pursue some of these grants. But the 355, I think, is one that we've got to, you know, hopefully, you know, can address in the next, you know, 6 months or so about, and obviously working with the Board of Finance. We have to have a talk with the Board of Finance about that too. So,
So to Scott's point, Peggy, what do you think is a reasonable time to get an update back to the board about the easements?
I think in probably, you know, July or August. You know, it depends. It's 3 very different types of situations. So I'm hoping that one of the easements will actually be resolved here in the next week or 2. Rob, correct me if I'm wrong. That one is very close. And so if that does get secured, I'd even talk about this at our next meeting, because that to me is gives a much more defined timetable for the south side of the street. The 2 on the north side of the street, there's more complications with each of them, and they're very different, the complications. So, but I'd easily be able to come back in July and just give you guys an update about where things are. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. All right, moving on to number 11, which is the update on town employees' re-entrance to town facilities. And I think Deb Millardo is on, our HR director. And I just thought it would be a nice opportunity to Deb to brief the board on all the work that she's been doing over the last month as we've gone through these different phases in town hall. And I think she's done an amazing job, and I want to give her a lot of credit, and Paula, and just really putting good policies in place that keep our employees safe. And, you know, just helping work through a lot of the concerns and issues the employees have had also about this whole reentry into the workplace timeline that we put together. So Deb, I will turn it over to you. I think she's muted. Deb, you're on mute.
I can see her. She's trying to get it working. There she goes.
Okay.
There we go. Sorry. So let me start by talking about the creation of the safe workplace policy that is in place today. This has been a collaborative effort through the Emergency Management Committee. So working with the Director of Health and the Director of Emergency Management, we looked at the guidelines set out by the Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development, who actually created the safe workplace rules for employers, and mirrored our policies to fall in line with the state. So we started those policies in March, which, you know, took us from full COVID remote work to where we are today, which is employees are back full time for the most part. The last week, yes, I forget my weeks now. Last week we started with a back 100% for the workforce at town campus, as well as Madison Youth and Family and seniors, the senior center. We are not seeing the public except for by appointment at this point. The thought is that we'll reevaluate that proposal come the beginning of July. But we have been actually making great efforts to serve the public by increasing technology. And, you know, a lot of kudos have to go out to the many people who have put together very quickly some online permitting for town residents and contractors and the public to be able to use. Right now, an example would be our permitting process is almost 100% completely online. It should be at 100% by the end of June. We can even do dog licenses now online. So employees are encouraging callers when they call in to kind of redirect them to these other options versus coming into the town campus and physically buying your dog license or paying your tax bill. So we are complying with ADA regulations and FMLA in terms of employees, as most employers are. There are provisions that are set forth that if an employee has an underlying health condition that puts them at risk, or another qualifier, that the employer make every attempt to allow them to continue to work remotely from home. And we are currently still doing that. Again, that'll be evaluated come July, and to see if we can continue it beyond that point. In terms of safety precautions, town campus is going to look a lot different when you come in. One of the major changes that has taken place is there's plexiglass shielding now on all counter areas. So there is a barrier between the public and the employee, and the town clerk's office, in land use. We've always had it in the tax office. Again, kudos to Bill McMinn and facilities for getting this done in a manner of a couple of weeks. Again, that was considered a best practice by the state of Connecticut, and encouraged not just for municipalities, but for all businesses. And I'm sure you've seen them if you've gone into a grocery store or into a Walmart. So those have been installed. They are permanent. They are not designed to come down. In terms of the employees' safety, we are doing daily temperature checks for all divisions. So from public works to town campus to building and grounds, all employees are having their temperatures taken first thing at the start of the workday. We have a policy in place that for notification, if an employee's temperature is higher than 100.4, what the supervisor is supposed to do, and contacting me and Trent. So that kind of starts everybody's workday. The first couple of days, you could see that it was different. But everybody's kind of gotten into the groove of it. And I think everyone recognizes that this is for their own protection, as well as the protection of the public. We are not going to temperature take the public when they come in, at least at this point. There is a policy in town campus now that all employees wear masks when they can't social distance. So if you do come into town campus, please have your mask on. Especially in the hallways, common areas. We're limiting the amount of, in fact, we're not allowing any large conference in-person meetings to occur. We're encouraging Zoom and bridge calls, which now every department has their own conference bridge number, which is making it a lot easier for us to again, conduct business without having to worry that we're sharing a bridge number. General cleaning rules that have been put in place by the state, we're complying with those. Every employee has been given alcohol wipes. We have the alcohol wipes to wipe down the counter surfaces, your desktop. So anything that came out in terms of a best practice in reopening the workplace for the employees as well as for the public when they start coming in, Madison really has complied with. And, again, kudos to, a really great team to work with Trent and Sam and Bill and Art, because hey, can we do this? They've managed to get it done. And a rather short period of time. So for now, this is status quo for us. Again, each announcement by the governor can create a change in the policy, and we monitor those as they come out on a daily basis. And again, eye to July in terms of, perhaps reopening for full public access to town campus. Any questions?
I just want to echo what Deb was saying. It's been a great team effort here in Town Hall, and I think generally the public, at least in terms of, I get a lot of complaints from the public about a lot of things, but I've had virtually no complaints, I don't think, about access to town services. I think people still feel that they have access to their government, and that they're able to get things done. Yes, there's always complaints about the beaches or the trash cans or things like that, but just overall, people are, I think the employees here have done an excellent job to try to step up and meet the demands of our citizens to get what they need from town government.
Thanks, Deb, for everything you're doing and helping everybody.
You're welcome. This was new for all of us. I've been in government over 20 years, and in talking with Sam, we're veterans from many different types of disasters, but this was unique to all of us.
No doubt.
And it definitely was a learning curve, but again, good team to work with.
I love hearing everybody pulling together too. It's great.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thanks for the update, Deb. So the next item on our agenda is an update from the Ad Hoc Island Avenue School Future Use Committee. This committee was appointed in January, I think, and originally we were supposed to have an update from them in March. But obviously with all things COVID, I know this team was really eager to get to work even during the middle of COVID, but we still had to make sure that we have the technology available to allow public access to their meetings. But since then, they've stepped up tremendously. And so I would like Graham Curtis as the chair of the committee, and I guess I'll turn it over to Graham.
Great. Can you hear me? Can you start my PowerPoint, Lauren, if you have it?
Yep, I just was making sure that I had all of your members promoted for you. Give me one second.
Great.
I'll share my
Thank you.
screen. Okay, Graham, whenever you're ready.
Great, thanks. I'll give you a quick 10-minute summary, and you can ask questions at the end. Good morning. Thank you for inviting us to give an update on the progress of the Island Ave School Reuse Committee. For the record, Graham Curtis. With me today are the members of the Building Committee, or the Ad Hoc Committee, listed below. I won't reread their names. I'd like to briefly remind everyone of the charge. The Board of Selectmen wrote it, so I don't know, it's more for the public. I won't read it in detail. The key is we were looking at possible reuses for the Island Avenue School, but excluding use as a public school for the town of Madison. That is one of the key charges. And there's a list of tasks that we need to do to follow through on, and I'll give you more detail in a second. Next slide. This is the Island Avenue School. As part of our process, we were tasked with gathering existing data. One of the key pieces of information we found was a site plan from the 1998 modular addition that has a lot of information on the site. Some of the key elements, the total site is about 9 acres. This plan shows the existing wetland that was flagged at the time, and it's hard to make out, but there's a series of numbers running along parallel to the Tungus Brook. And also the existing septic system is also delineated on this plan. Based on the wetlands, the deduction of about 3 acres of wetlands, that means there's about 9 acres of buildable land on the property. Next slide, please. This will it's kind of the high level 30,000 foot milestone points that we're dealing with. The proposed schedule for the committee was originally, we're supposed to come in last month and give you an update. Due to COVID, obviously it's been delayed, but we have a more detailed schedule at the end of this presentation. But and we'll discuss that. It's preliminary, and we're looking for some input. And there's some things that need to happen out of our control. The next few slides are things that we don't have control over. The lease, as you know, the Selectmen, the lease has been agreed, or just maybe back to that one. Yeah, so the lease agreement has been signed to the end of the next school year. So that's good. That solves some urgency issue. There is a legal issue with the original grantors of the school, the property, the school that's being researched by the town attorneys involving an heir to the original property. I think they're still on that, and maybe, I don't know, at the end of this, maybe Peggy can give us an update with the legal firms, but I'm told they're expecting a favorable outcome. One of the, as I mentioned before, the septic system, the capacity of the land, as in Madison, a town with no sewers, septic systems are a critical determinant of what land development scenarios you can utilize. So before we get too far ahead with the public with possible suggestions, we felt that it was a good idea to do a septic feasibility study to see what the capacity of the land is. Any use involving residential use is largely determined by the capacity of the site to accept septic waste. We solicited 3 proposals from some local experts in this field, which we can get, and they're all under about 10,000. So we'd like to make a request for some funding out of the grant money, or some planning money. I know times are tough with COVID, and I understand that budgeting constraints and so on and so forth, but I think this is money well spent to help our determine it. We may come back for another funding request later on once some of the options crystallize, but that's undetermined at this time. So one of the main tasks we have is public outreach. So we're planning on doing an initial public outreach through a poll through the town's website to gather its suggested uses. It's wide open. We're not precluding any ideas. We're not giving anyone preconceived ideas. So we're just looking for a list of 3 to 5 ideas of people, what they think out there. I mean, we've heard 6 or 7 ideas floated already. Also, we're going to do a newsletter to let the people know what we're doing and what's going on, and that'll be published on the website. And I think there's a draft format now. I don't know if Lauren has a chance to get the town website poll up, but we're expecting that in the short term. Subsequent to that, we would do additional public workshops at a time and location to be determined. They may be online. Ideally they would be somewhere in the neighborhood, but we'll have to play that by ear. And then once we crystallize that, we'll determine whether we go out with a request for proposal. The format of that needs to be discussed. A straight sale, a sale development, there's a lot of variables in terms of what the benefits to the town, which we're charged with. And then finally, if everything goes according to plan, there would be some kind of town referendum for the decision. So next slide, please. So this is a detailed schedule, and you can look at this later at your leisure. And this is very preliminary, but basically the first 2 tasks, the feasibility study, and then the format of this is like a planning, it's color coded. Joe did a nice job on a committee, did a nice job with this format. I like the format. It gives you a lot of information in a relatively compact format. But so we're in the planning stage. The dark bar is like a planning process, and then it carries through to the final evaluation. So the feasibility study, we're looking to get that released in the near future. We think it's a good time because of the school not being occupied currently to do some testing. There would be some test pits done as part of this evaluation. And the next task is the public poll for some brainstorming. We're looking to solicit any possible scenario. So we can't be questioned of why didn't we think of doing a dog park or any number of things. And I won't go through the details. This goes to the schedule, and there's updates to the Board of Selectmen. This is one. And then if everything goes according to plan, this schedule shows a referendum early next year. Obviously, that's subject to confirmation by the Board of Selectmen, and some of it depends on what comes out of the RFP development process. So with that, I'd like to throw it open for any questions or comments.
Maybe real quickly, I can just mention there's 2 issues with the deed to Island Avenue. When the property was actually given to the town back in the late, I think it was 1950, prior to the building of the school, there were 2 restrictions placed on it. And we kind of discovered this in late December, early January, as we were getting prepared to take action on this building. One was that the property had basically offered the estate or the heirs a right of first refusal on any sale of the property. And the second piece is a restriction of use for the property, which would be limiting it to, and I don't have the exact language with me, but excluding industrial purposes and commercial use. I think it was limited to use as a school. And if I recall, there was a reference to an insane asylum in there as well. So there's some language in it that basically limits the use of the property. So normally what you would want to do is get a release from these, from the heirs. And we've just it's been problematic trying to track down that heir, those heirs to give those releases. And so if we can't find those heirs and get them to provide releases from those two things, then we would have to go through court to make that happen. So right now we have our legal counsel looking into the heir search. That got delayed a little bit because of COVID, obviously. And they're kind of ramping that up again. And if we can't get satisfactory conclusion, we'll have to make a decision at one point whether or not we want to then go through the legal process of getting releases from those two things, which are critical to do anything here. So that is going to affect the timeline. But I don't think it's going to change what we end up doing in terms of making, this is going to be a town decision ultimately. It just might impact the timeline. So that's kind of an update on that.
I think we, the selectmen, are going to have to make a decision about whether to fund this septic study. And I'm not sure it's on our agenda for today, but I think this committee is going to need some indication from us as to whether to move ahead on that.
My understanding was that this was in planning funds, and since it was under $10,000, we wouldn't need any formal vote on it. So I think that, the discussion today is obviously, do we support doing that kind of feasibility study? And I would argue very much yes, that we should be doing it. It's an important piece of the puzzle about what that value and future use of that property is by having the study completed.
I agree with you, Peggy, and I guess it's important that all the selectmen at least express their 2 cents on that matter. But you're right. I don't think we need a formal action.
Sounds like a bit of a gating factor to moving the process forward. So I support it.
Yeah, I support it as well. Although I think, Al, my understanding is similar to yours. That while it doesn't require any special town meeting or Board of Finance approval, it does. We usually do take action on spending discretionary funds. So if I'm misunderstanding that, Peggy, we can clarify that. But my recollection is similar to Al's.
When I'd spoken, I thought to Stacy, I didn't think we were required to take action, but I'm happy we could do that today, I guess, right, Lauren?
Yeah, and we can treat them as two separate issues.
Yeah.
I support this and have no quarrel with you doing it. I'm just now questioning my understanding of the protocol.
Okay. Aaron, what are your thoughts?
On which part? The protocol or the study?
Well, the study, I guess, first of all, and then second of all, we can decide what we want to do from a protocol. We can take a formal vote if we'd like. We just would need to make a motion, I guess, right, to do so.
Right.
But
so the outcome of the study, the purpose of the study would be, how would it impact the outcome? I guess it would further define what options are available with that. I guess that's a question for Graham.
Yeah, it will determine a density of residential use possible on the site. Not to say that's the conclusion, but that's an option that has been discussed. So if there's a certain number of residential units you could put on the site would be determined by this study. And it's complicated because you get into DEP permitting and so on and so forth.
Right.
But
it sounds like it'd be something that have to be done ultimately, no matter what.
Correct. It's kind of an incremental approach.
Yeah.
We could go with an elaborate study, and a use study. Guilford did something similar, but they kind of rolled everything into one. But I think it's important, big cognizant of the funding. We're trying to do it kind of incrementally.
Okay. It makes sense to me.
Okay, so I guess the question is, do we need to, let's get into formalities. Lauren, my advice how to handle this, do you want to do a formal, I guess, authorizing?
Yeah, I mean, it is less, as long as it's less than 10,000, Peggy, you are authorized to approve that alone. But I do think just because of the conversation you guys have had today, if someone wants to open the agenda for an additional item just to discuss and take action to approve moving forward the septic feasibility study, that would be appropriate.
I'll make a motion to open the agenda to discuss and take action on the feasibility study, the septic feasibility study.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
But so only to say that if you know, by doing this today, I don't want to further hinder the office of the first's prerogative to make these decisions if that's an authority that's vested with you, Peggy. So I appreciate, you know, accommodating the board this morning, but I don't want this to set a precedent that somehow limits your ability moving forward.
Okay, no, I appreciate you saying that. I think this, I guess I just understood all along that this was something that was going to be part of this committee, that there would be some funds allocated for them to do the studies that they thought was the appropriate thing to do. And I talked to Graham about this a couple different times, and he sent estimates, and I talked to Stacy about it, what would be the appropriate steps in the process. So, but with that, let's, I guess.
We have to vote on opening the agenda first.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So all in favor of opening the agenda to include, discuss, and take action on the funding the septic study for $10,000, say aye.
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 Okay, great. And then I guess now we have to vote on the actual motion, right? Can somebody make the actual motion?
I'll make a motion to provide the Island Avenue team $10,000 to perform a septic study
Second.
out of the planning money.
Then we got a second. Okay. Any more discussion? All right. All in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Okay, great. And I will say he did get 3 estimates. That was something that I requested. So, all right,
Well,
great.
if any of them are $10,000 and $1, then it's above your threshold anyways. We just covered you.
You did. Well, I want to compliment your team as well, Graham, and I know some of your board members are on, that, you know, your willingness to, you know, take on this challenge, especially now. We have a lot of other priorities, I know, in our lives right now. And, but timing is very important on this so that the community has some assurance that this will move forward and will resolve the future of the property, whether it ends up staying in town hands or moving into private hands for development or for a school. We just got to start doing our homework and keep things moving so we can make some decisions and move on with some of these projects. So thank you for all your work.
You're welcome. Thanks for the committee.
Any other questions for the committee right at this stage? No?
I did have one. Is the timeline of a referendum in early next year? Is that something? Does that fall under your?
I saw that. I think that is, you know, clearly we'll get into further discussions about the feasibility of that timeline, depending, I think, on the outcome of the work that you do. It's possible, but there's a lot of things that we have to go through to get to that point.
Right, I understood. I just wanted, if there's any constraints that you were aware of that we should be aware of.
I think it's more, are we going to be ready to do that? That might be a little bit of an aggressive timeline, given the fact that we've lost several months here in terms of just, you know, progress with the community. But I don't know, the board may have other views. I mean, I think we continue to shoot for that, but we'll just see what happens.
I think that's the right way to think about it. We use it as a working deadline until we decide that we can't.
I'm encouraged by the timeline. I think that if we can stick to it, I think that would be great.
Hey guys, this is Joe Paradiso. I'm on the committee. The only thing with the timeline to know, your back is up against the lease renewal for
Right.
next year. So if the lease comes out for renewal and that goes out for vote and you renew it, that just extends the, whatever Madison can do with the property for another year after that. So
Well, I think
I see.
important point, because I think part of this is, will we have all the information that we want in the fall to make that decision? And so that'll factor into, I think, the renewal decision as well. We'll just have to see where we are in terms of information with the property and also where we are on these releases, the legal constraints. I'm hoping we'll have a better handle on that in the next month.
Peggy, did the attorney say if there's some sort of a statutory timeline or specific efforts that have to be taken with as far as reaching the heirs, and if X, Y, and Z is done and there's no response, usually there's I feel like there's timelines in there where they can then move on to the next step.
I'm not sure. I mean, the most recent feedback I got was that they were making some progress just doing this all internally. They haven't gone to the point where they've hired an external firm. And so it's a fair question, though. I need to get more information from them.
Yeah.
We just haven't had a lot of contact with them about this. So,
Right. I mean, I'm sure that things are kind of been delayed because of the courts, but it just seems to me like there would be some sort of a statutory, it could at least give us an idea of the time periods.
I was surprised that a lot of this, I was told how long it would take could depend on the judge, and how much work they would expect.
Is this Judge Barrett? This is Madison, right?
I don't know. I just was told that it depends on what requirements and how extensive the expectation would be, because some of these heirs go to the family ties go to Italy.
Right.
So the question is, if we don't have success in the US, is there going to be a demand that we now have to go to Italy?
Oh.
And we know that there's been issues obviously in Italy with the COVID situation too. So trying to get any kind of heir search over there could end up taking a lot of time and costing a lot of money. So I think they're trying to do as much work here in the States first, and then and a court here in the States may not require that. They might think that enough has been done.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay.
So, but all fair enough. And I think I'll try to focus on that in the next couple of weeks. And Graham, I'll reach out to you with your committee just to get more up to speed on what the attorneys want. Maybe we could have a call with them about the heir search and kind of what our next steps are.
That'd be great.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thanks, team.
Thank you.
All right. So next on our agenda is number 13. Discuss and take action to declare a local civil preparedness emergency for an additional 21-day period from June 10th to July 1st.
You're looking for a motion, Peggy?
Yes, a motion, please.
Motion.
You just make it out.
Yes.
Second.
Okay, great. And discussion this is just the ongoing kind of routine that we've gotten into, that our charter requires us to declare this every 21 days. And
Given the update from the governor that we're moving into phase 2, do we still have guidance to continue the 21 days? We still need to be doing this, right?
We do. I mean, I think we're mirroring what the state is doing. And right now the declaration for the state is through September 9th, and there hasn't been any attempt to change that right now. Our lives are going to be driven by executive orders from Hartford, and that will continue, I think, throughout the summer.
So two things. One is sort of a technical comment on the document. It is still referencing the groups of 5, which was the original executive order from the governor, but that's since been revised. So it might be time to
update that document. Yeah.
I'll change it.
Yeah.
And then the second one, just to sort of expand on Scott's thought, is why why do we think we need to continue to operate under a state of emergency in the town of Madison? What decisions need to be made that require that state of emergency to be ongoing?
Well, I think once again, it gives us flexibility. It's also mirroring what the state of Connecticut is doing. We're still operating, even on a regional basis, our emergency operations center. It allows us to continue to track expenses related to COVID and the state of emergency. So the things that we talked about at the beginning of this meeting, those are all going to be reimbursable, both from FEMA, but also the state now is going to be picking up the remaining 25% of the tab. So I think it just keeps us in line with the state so that we can qualify for funding. Also provides us an ability to make local things through executive orders. For example, the executive order on the beaches being resident only is part of an executive order. So if we were not under a state of emergency, we probably could not keep that policy in place. And we're still not operating our town government in normal. Just as Deb talked about, we still aren't open to the public, our town facilities. We still haven't opened up our senior center. So there's a lot of things that aren't normal still. So those would be the reasons I would argue would make sense to continue to keep this going forward.
Okay, and I think it's just important that we are refreshing the public's understanding of what we're doing, right?
And ourselves included.
Well, but I mean, the reality is there's a certain amount of fatigue in the community,
Yes.
and desire to resume normalcy. So as we continue to operate under a state of emergency, I think it's important that everybody is aware of why, and reminded of that. It's fair, and it feels like we've been in this state for years, not months. But it has been months. So I would, I would implore this board to, take every opportunity to conduct our business as normal, as best we can, and still recognize that we're not out of the woods yet.
No, I agree with your comments, Bruce, and it is important to remind people of why. And there still is a health emergency. People are still getting, can catch the virus, and people are still in the hospital, and unfortunately, people are still dying from this horrible disease. So it's important to remember that's why we are in this state. So with that, any other comments? I guess we have a motion to approve the local civil preparedness emergency for an additional 21-day period. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Great. Okay, it'll be nice when we don't have to do these. All right. Discuss and take action to approve awarding the 5-year contract for the collection of facilities, refuse, and recycling for town and Board of Education facilities and containers to Hometown Waste LLC Schweitzer Waste Removal.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Do we have competing bids here?
So
Was there?
this one I have to say, I don't know anything about, and I apologize. Lauren, do you have the backup on this? Because this was one I didn't pick up on that was on here.
So it looks like Bill left our meeting. I thought he would be here to talk to you guys about this, but my understanding is that no, we did not receive competing bids. We put it out to bid, and this was the only response that was received for the trash.
That's surprising.
And this is the current trash removal contractor. So we expected them, but we did also expect a couple others, and we did not get any competing bids.
And is this also the Board of Education has to approve this?
Yes.
Okay.
One would think that this would be a fairly coveted contract by local businesses.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why there was the lack of interest, but my understanding, I actually went back and looked the last time we did this because it's a 5-year contract. So the last time was way back in 2015. And at that time, 5 years ago, we only got 2 responses to the bid. So it's not like we got 10 before and only 1 now. I guess it's always kind of been not, well responded to.
Well, and these are contracts, though, that we have a process of how we have to notify that they're out to bid, right?
Yes, it goes in the newspaper, it's posted on the website, it goes to the GIS website through the state. So it goes several different ways to the contractors.
Right, and it might be just the timing of this was obviously people are focused on a lot of different things right now. You know, I guess it's another discussion about how waste is managed generally in Connecticut. But I guess any other question or discussion?
Can I ask Lauren, do we need to decide this today, Lauren?
I mean, I suppose it could wait into your next meeting, but it is important to get it signed before the end of the fiscal year so that they can start effective July 1.
I'm not sure. I sensed a little level of discomfort here amongst us. It is disturbing when there's only one bidder for something that maybe we don't understand the marketplace, but it just feels odd to me. And I don't know whether Billy has any insight, but perhaps if we didn't have to act on it today, maybe we would be more comforted if Billy could be with us next time to tell us what he understands about the marketplace. I don't know whether I'm just speaking for me or for everybody else.
Well, I would hope that that this wouldn't be brought to the board for action if they felt that there was something wrong with the bid process. I think that if it's satisfied their sense of what's appropriate, then probably that's good enough for us to go on.
Assuming he followed just the normal bid process, right? I mean, if as long as the bid process was followed, then it is what it is.
Yeah. So I don't have any reservations about voting on this today, but if others do, then we can defer as long as we're not creating some other unintended consequence.
Yeah. I'm quite willing to vote on it today. I was just testing to see where others were at.
No, I think that's a good point, Al. I mean, if we can hold off without having, some negative consequence, why don't we just do that if there's questions?
I'm fine holding off as well, because I
feel like we have to do our due diligence.
Yeah, and I guess I'm the one that's going to be signing the contract. So I was not prepared today, so I apologize. That was one I didn't somehow realize was on the agenda. And I just would want to understand a little bit more about it. It sounds like, it's not a reflection on Bill that he didn't do anything properly at all. I think it's just more my lack of preparation and, not having the benefit of him being able to give us more of the background. Maybe we postpone. Does this also go to Board of Finance? This does not, right? It's just us, or it does go to Board of Finance?
It will go to Board of Finance on the 17th.
Okay. So they can approve it, and then our meeting is after theirs?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Your meeting is the 22nd.
Yeah, so actually, it's only 5 days after their approval, right? So it's actually not going to be that much of a delay. So so I'm fine. I guess we would need a motion to table this.
So moved.
Yes.
So do we want to phrase that motion to table until such time as we get an update on the validity of the bidding process?
Okay.
That's really what we're looking for, right?
I'll second the motion to table, by the way.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. All right. Okay. Oh boy, 10 o'clock. Tax abatements and refunds.
There are none.
None. Okay, great. One easy thing. Number 16, discuss and take action to approve awarding the annual Town of Madison Donald Rankin Community Service Award to Jack Davis and Gus Horvath. And I know this is a new tradition in our town, and so I'd actually like to turn this over to Al. I guess we need a motion first, excuse me.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and then I will turn this over to Al to give us a little bit more of the background and talk about the process going forward with this award. So,
I've prepared some brief formal remarks. On behalf of this board, it is my honor as its senior member to announce the awarding of this recognition. Today is just the announcement. At a later date, when social distancing requirements are relaxed, we'll hold a ceremonial event. 4 years ago, the Board of Selectmen created the Don Rankin Community Service Award for the purpose of recognizing individuals who have devoted extraordinary efforts towards the betterment of our beloved town. Past award winners have been Don Rankin and Peter Metz. Currently, at a time when Madison is experiencing a season of anguish and dark doubts, it is most fitting that this community look to draw inspiration and light from examples set by those who have led the way previously. Our awardees are well known in Madison as a result of their 5 decades of service. They've contributed their personal resources, their time, their energy, and their talent to us. Their efforts have been directed towards fulfilling our civic engagement, increasing our economic vitality, and enhancing our cultural enrichment. Madison is a much better place as a result of their efforts. So today we announce the names of Jack Davis and Gus Horvath as our awardees. We recognize their leadership, constancy, and loving service on behalf of our shining town. Jack and Gus, Madison salute you. I think at some future time, we will get together and have an award ceremony. For those of you that know these two individuals, they will each want their opportunity on the microphone, and it will not be a short ceremony. Today, I think this announcement recognizes the consensus of the 5 of us, and we will follow up at some later date with a ceremony.
Hear, hear.
Couldn't be 2 more well-deserving candidates for this award. This is exciting.
Gus is here. Would you like me to promote him so he can speak? He
Yeah,
just has his
as long as he
hand
doesn't have like a
raised.
30-minute thing prepared at this point.
I don't think he can promise you that. Here he is.
Hey, Gus.
Go ahead, Gus.
Maybe not.
Yeah, he came on and he unmuted himself.
Gus, you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I just wanted to thank the board very much for this recognition. I appreciate it very, very much. And I have a connection with both Don Rankin and with Jack Davis. And I just wanted to comment on that. My dad took ill, lived down in Fairfield, and went to the emergency room at the old Park City Hospital in Bridgeport. And I drove down there. It took 45, 50 minutes, whatever it was. And I went into the emergency room and went into where my dad was. And it was the doctor there. And he introduced himself. And it was Dr. Rankin. And he mentioned he was a resident of Madison and knew me because I had been first selectman a few years before this happened. The second thing is with Jack Davis. Many people probably don't know the things that Jack has done behind the scenes over the years, but when I was president of Little League and we were growing like crazy, we were running out of money and couldn't pay our bills. And I mentioned this to somebody, I don't recall who it was, but they said, why don't you go see Jack Davis? So I made an appointment. His secretary was a friend of mine, so I had an insider to do that. And that was the first time I ever really met Jack. This was probably in 1970 or 71. And I explained to him how with all the expansion of Little League at that time, we were not able to pay all of our bills. So he told me, bring them in at the end of the season and I'll pay whatever you guys can't pay. And he did that for 2 or 3 years. And then the last time I think it was that I went in with the bills, he was busy in his office. And he heard my voice in the outer office, and he opened the door and invited me to come in. And he said he wanted me to meet someone. And it was a parent of one of the students at his school, the Grove School. And I was, quite surprised that he would do that. But it was Dinah Shore. And I don't know whether some of you younger people remember.
Yes,
her
we know
name,
who Dinah
remember
Shore
her,
is.
I know who Dinah Shore is.
But I met Dinah Shore in Jack Davis's office, and
Wow.
her son was a student there. So as I said in the beginning, I have a unique connection with both Don Rankin and with Jack Davis. But again, thank you very, very much.
Well deserved.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Gus. And, we look forward to when we can get together and do this properly. So I think today is just to kind of check the box that we've had the vote, but then move forward with more ceremonial presentation at a later date when we can do it in person. So.
Yeah, well, with our age, I would hope Jack and I will be around if this is delayed too long. We're both in our 90s. So.
Well, still plenty of time. So I guess with that, if we could, all in favor of approving the awarding of the annual Town of Madison Donald Rankin Community Service Award to Jack Davis and Gus Horvath. All in favor?
Aye.
And with gratitude, thank you. Any citizens' comments?
There's some in the chat here. I don't know if we should be answering them or not.
So I will read them into the record, and I actually was just typing them into the minutes as a record as well. And I'm happy to forward these on to the departments responsible to have them answered privately to Janet. But just so there is an actual record that she did chat in the Q&A section of the Zoom meeting. Janet Nicolini asked the following questions regarding the downtown center project. She asked, did we actually receive the state grants yet for this project, or is it contingent upon completion? Regarding the town reentry into the employee reentry into town offices, she says, is there going to be a review of future processes and which can stay more virtual even after this emergency is over? Regarding the Island Avenue septic study, she questioned, what is the rationale for the town doing the septic study? Is it to find out what type of investors may come in? And regarding the declaration of the local civil preparedness emergency, she questioned if you can include new cases in your updates and how these are trending over time. I think that's valuable info. So I will put these in an email as well and get them out to the appropriate departments to answer her privately.
Okay, and that's it for public comment?
At this time, if you have public comment, you can raise your hand and I will invite you to speak. There is no one right now with their hand raised, so we'll just give it a second.
Okay.
And I think you're probably good to close the meeting.
All right. I guess a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
All right, great. Well, thank you for hanging in there for another marathon meeting. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. See you
Bye.
guys.
You.
Bye.